The history of vampires within the world of darkness is both ancient and complex, and is often subject to mystery, legend, and blood-stricken secrecy. The lore which concerns the creation of vampires is one which is often avoided by many members of the unliving community. Alas, tonight, we will be diving into some of the most gruesome stories of some of the most powerful beings to ever roam this earth. Gods within their own right, these were the creatures birthed as kings and queens of vampire kind. Each one, however, were cursed for their transgressions against their own creators, of which they passed down their bloodlines, creating 13 unique vampiric lineages, known as clans. These tales are marked with great swathes of blood, horror, and tragedy, as these clan founders, whilst intensely powerful, were brutally flawed. Some were betrayers, some were psychopaths, but all were integral in creating the society of kindred we see to this day. They may be the terrifying threat which lurks upon the horizon, threatening to end the world, but these few, these Antediluvians, were the most important vampires to ever exist, who may still pull the strings of every kindred to this night. But first, I'm excited to announce our first ever sponsor. This video is sponsored by World Anvil, a service which allows you to create wiki-style presentations for your fictional worlds and TTRPG campaigns. World Anvil is the perfect platform to start creating and refining your fictional settings, with 25 world-building article templates to choose from. The service contains many amazing features, such as interactive maps and chronicles, which allow you to combine custom timelines and maps, so you can forge the history of your very own universe. World Anvil is also an amazing tool for GMs, DMs, and storytellers alike, supporting over 45 systems, including D&D, World of Darkness, Chronicles of Darkness, and even Exalted. This service provides you with many features to help organize your players and characters, with a variety of helpful elements which track character sheets and progress within your campaigns. So, use coupon code Apollo at checkout for 40% off all yearly memberships to World Anvil. The link is down in the description below, and clicking it would help out tremendously. Again, a huge thank you to World Anvil for sponsoring this video, and don't forget to like and subscribe to help support the channel, and let me know what you want to see next in the comments below. The term Antediluvian has both a literal meaning and a uniquely vampiric one. The term generally refers to those people, often of the blood-sucking persuasion, who were active before the Great Deluge, or the biblical flood of Noah's Ark fame. However, such a generalized term would also include Cain and his immediate children. Broadly speaking, Antediluvian often encapsulates the vampires of the third generation, many of which were active before the flood, but were also the progenitors of the 13 clans. Some of these vampires were also not originally of ancient founding, as some have been speculated to have usurped the generations of blood by nefarious means, whether they intentionally did so or otherwise. Within this installment, we'll be detailing the origins of these vampires, and the tales of strife, subjugation, and treachery which occurred in their godlike presence. The histories of these vampires in this video will be summaries, so please do let me know if you would like to see a deeper dive on any of the beings which are brought up tonight. So sit back and relax, for these are the tales of the Antediluvians, the wicked third generation. The tale of Brujah is a complicated one. As one of the progeny of the second generation, the man garnered many tales of his experiences within the Second City, the ancient civilization founded by the Antediluvians after the Great Flood, and also the First City, founded by Cain himself. Some tales, such as Brujah and the Wine Merchant, show him as an ill-tempered and malicious man, whom would kill with impunity at the very thought of his vampiric superiority being undermined. Other tales show him in a compassionate light, others see him as a force for change, but there is an overwhelming tone settled around his historic presence, which echoed much mistrust for him from his fellow Antediluvians. Brujah was considered a troublemaker and an insurrectionist, but this could be due to the other members of the third generation making him their scapegoat for their very own crimes, such as the parricide of their own sires, the second generation. Many kindred believed him to be a bloodthirsty individual, whom thrived off of combat, violence, and atrocity, with many speculating that he had multiple personalities, which would cause great paranoia to those close to him. However, Brujah is primarily venerated by vampires who choose to believe that they are of his bloodline, dubbing themselves True Brujah. For Brujah had created the child outside of Cain's dictum within the second city, the vampire known as Troil, or the usurper of the Brujah clan. Troil's tale is also one of great ambiguity. They are considered an antediluvian by diablerie, a deeply taboo act of consuming another vampire's soul, the one in question being that of Brujah himself. Troil, whether male or female, was known for their legendary short temper, which is typical of many modern Brujah seen in present nights. However, Brujah's child was a great crime against Cain's own laws, and as rumour passed, Troil grew aware of a plot which called for their own destruction. Enraged, the neonate plotted to overthrow their blood father, engaging in a coup which saw Brujah supposedly diablerized by the fangs of their own spawn. This act, however, is highly contentious. The true Brujah and the Brujah of Troil's new bloodline fiercely debate on the events of this great tragedy. Troil and Brujah may even be the same person, but the annals of ancient history are eroded to such a degree that even the fanciest of speculations may even hold an ounce of truth. Whilst many of the true names of the Antediluvians are lost to the sands of time, Cappodocious of Clan Cappodocian, now the Haqata, referred to himself as such due to the point of his origin, the Anatolia region of Turkey. In life, Cappodocious was a religious man, allegedly a mortal priest and a person of great faith. He was known to have many dealings with the spectral entities of the world of darkness, known as wraiths, and had a myriad of connections with the beings of the underworld. When the man was selected for embrace for his impeccable intellect and studies into the occult, it is said when his body transferred from the states of life to undeath, the spirits of which he had convened with during his mortal existence attempted to bind upon his soul to prevent the vampirification process, and to some degree it is believed that this was a partial success. The man post-embrace was thus rendered an incomplete being, having said to have fractured his soul due to the incomplete process of vampirification. Many attribute his clan's grave-like disposition to be due to this catastrophe, and the man himself constantly sought answers for his predicament, becoming insanely enthralled in the matters of life and death. It is said that this statement of being incomplete may be the reason that his own blood usurper, Augustus Giovanni, could not fully devour his soul through diablerie, but we may touch on this at a later point. Ennoia, if we are to believe the Gnostic mythology surrounding vampires within the world of darkness, takes her name from the female half of God. Many of her brood refer to her as Mother Nature, but some believe her to be the female depiction of the second generation vampire Enoch. Yet such would complicate our tales tonight. The general consensus has us believe that Ennoia was the child of Lilith, the so-called Dark Mother. However, their relationship was scarce at best, as Lilith abandoned Ennoia to be raised by wolves. The Gangrel scholar Lord Ashton surmised that Ennoia had very close relations with these wolves, to the point she even copulated with some of the pack males, bearing them children. Thus, the Gangrel is said to have very close relations with lupines as a result, but Ashton's accounts also depict her as a seasoned mother, particularly in the birthing sense. In the first city of Enoch, Cain's own domain, Ashton said that she had relations with several men, giving them each a child, yet such information is subject to a good amount of scrutiny by vampiric scholars. What can be said about her motherly qualities is that she was a very vacant parental figure. According to Cainite myth, after the fall of the second city, Ennoia and the Ravnos antediluvian Ravana wandered westward. The two had a very close relationship, known to be brother and sister in some senses, but the two would not always share such an amicable amicable relationship. Ennoia was known for siring children as she pleased, but swiftly abandoning them to fend for themselves. She would watch from a distance, but remained a very unpresent force in her blood progeny's lives, a factor which would continue through most Gangrel sirings. The falling out between Ravana and Ennoia is rather vague from the Gangrel perspective. Some believe that their relationship was more than that of just siblings, whereas some surmise they quarrelled over a mutual person. Whatever occurred, however, drove them to each other's throats for decades. Each would weaponize their own fledgling spawn at each other, constantly brawling, with the Gangrel brood being much stronger than the Ravnos fledglings. However, Ravana was far more cunning than Ennoia, and developed an abomination which descended from the skies to purge the Gangrel armies which encroached upon them. Ever since, the Gangrel pack scattered west, with Ennoia dropping into torpor. None truly know of her whereabouts, or whether she ever awoke from her deep, eternal slumber. Haqim, unlike many within his generation, was not keen on the quarrellings of the Antediluvians, which would ultimately lead to their demise after they had slain their sires. There are various tales of his inception, much like many of the third generation, yet two remain to be very distinct. The first depicts Haqim as a warrior hunter, who had migrated alongside herds of animals across the Fertile Crescent, into Asia and North Africa. The man was an extremely prodigious scholar, and had learned to read and write during his travels, to the extent that he was able to understand the language of the dead. His talents, of which he had accumulated in a lifetime dedicated to this, earned him the presence of his prospective sire, but such becomes highly contentious. Some believe that he was chosen by Zilar to enter into the realms of unlife as a vampire, whereas another tale depicts his descent into vampirism as of his own choosing. The latter tale depicts Haqim as a servant of the king and queen of Enoch, two second-generation vampires created by Cain himself. It is said that he rose to the status of the lord of the armies of this first city, and gained a great reputation across the land, yet soon noticed that the regents of his home grew cruel and evil. Thus Haqim conspired to end their reign, and if we are able to believe such legends, as he cleaved their heads from their necks, he drank the supernatural vitae of their bodies, embracing himself in the process. After the Great Deluge and the fall of the first city, Haqim was placed as the second city's lawkeeper by the Antediluvian Saulot, and hence developed a caste system to aid the civilization's defenses. This caste system was divided into the viziers, the judges, and the sorcerers, three castes which are still recognized by the clan to this day. However, peace was not a prevailing factor of the second city, and thus war came in swathes which eroded the settlement Haqim swore to uphold. After aiding the Salubri in battle against the Bali, Haqim grew tiresome of the constant bickerings of the Antediluvians, and organized a treasonous self-exile of his kind from the settlement. The clan moved to the mountainous ranges of Alamut, but his presence has scarcely been seen since ancient times. Many believe him to be in torpor, yet some members of the Banu Haqim swear they have felt his presence, and others claim to be in contact with the Antediluvian, proclaiming that he occupies a watcher's role over all of his modern spawn. Known as the Shadowed One, Lasombra is fabled to have had a dismal life as a mortal, living an existence which amounted to nothing spectacular. By some fluke of horrifying intervention, however, the man was selected for embrace, an event which would surprisingly elevate his entire being. However, deep within the recesses of his soul, Lasombra was enthralled by the macabre, and revelled in the cataclysm which would soon befall his world. As the waters of the Great Flood cascaded and drowned the civilization of Cain's making, Lasombra revelled in the apocalypse. When the waters of the flood dissipated, it is said that the man was eager to join the revolt with his fellow Antediluvians to slay the second generation. Yet such information is primarily spouted by the Ventrue, who believe that the Lasombra Antediluvian was the main culprit of such killings, primarily fueled by his jealousy for the Ventrue Antediluvian, the so-called rightful ruler of the third generation. However, many Lasombra deny such accusations, and much is unknown of their clan progenitor. Many understand understand, however, that Lasombra was a great lover of the oceans and had a passionate connection with the sea. After the fall of the second city, it is said that the Antediluvian returned to the depths and settled upon an island in the Mediterranean. There he became the overlord of a people known as the Hyksos, and became a figure who was venerated somewhat as a dark god. It is said that Lasombra relocated in various places across the centuries, even becoming the founder of a great tomb fortress in Sicily, known as the Castle of Shadows. There he would enter some form of meditative sleep, akin to torpor, where he would focus intently upon the abyss. Around him supposedly grew a great feudal kingdom, one of the greatest seen within the fabled golden era of vampiric superiority. But much of this kingdom was delegated to his respective underlings. His eventual state is subject to much speculation, as many believe that Lasombra wished to be free of his bodily constraints by tempting a blood usurper into his midst, a vampire known as Gratiano. Whether Gratiano truly diablerized Lasombra for this cause is greatly contested, and some believe the Antediluvian was outright slain, but his mark upon the consciousness of vampire society is still vastly felt to this day. Some say they have even seen sightings of his form present during the Gehenna War, but none truly know of his dark intentions. We have discussed Malkav's inception within our Malkavian installment, but I will indulge your curiosity here before you may wish to view our extended takes in that video later. The ancient vampiric myths believe that Malkav was something greater than a mere mortal, with some venerating him as an angelic being or a prophet of sorts. He was selected for embrace for his vision, which soon grew into a great curse after he entered vampiric existence. Legend goes that the sire of Malkav must have truly hated him, perhaps having known what the curse of the embrace would do unto his mind, which caused him to suffer a great amount of turmoil. He had the ability to connect with the streams of madness which threaded through the world, which offered to him great prophecies, which soon began to bear fruit. When the 13 clans began to spell war within the second city, it was Malkav who felt the madness growing throughout the mortals and the Canaanites alike. But the madness network, the web which weaved the histories of Malkav's memories, could not recall whether if the clans turned on themselves or whether the mortals rose up. What can be recalled, however, is that the vampiric clans fled the second city, yet Malkav's fate was one which would be swift, yet vicious and bloody. As he fled the city, he was met near the city of Petra, and was swiftly carved up by a maelstrom of bronze knives, talons, and fangs, and left to rot on the barren sands. However, Malkav was never truly lost, for if we believe the ancient myths, his followers found his body and drank from the vitae which seeped into the sands. Many believe that Malkav now lives within every one of his children's soul, bound to their blood for all eternity. Another of the third generation highlighted in our installment all about the Nosferatu, Absimiliard is a curious antediluvian. Said to have been a beautiful man of regal descent, he was sired by a female vampire of Cain's progeny, which left him with small yet noticeable scars which spawned an agonizing fixation for his tarnished skin. Due to this fixation of one aspect of his otherwise beautiful facade, he became enraptured by the idea of murdering his sire for the crimes she had committed against his beauty. As such, Absimiliard is one of the key figures responsible for the acts committed to the second generation, the great parricide which is consistently intertwined with the fates of the Antediluvians. Striking the first blow of this short yet eternal conflict, Absimiliard is widely recognized as the catalyst for the demise of the Antediluvians. His punishment from Cain was ironic, as his once beautiful form was twisted and mutilated to resemble that of a creature of pure nightmares, a curse which is present in every single one of his children. His current whereabouts is unknown, but there have been various sightings of him as recent as the year 2000, lurking within Eastern Europe, plotting some hideous revenge befitting of his twisted existence. The Ravnos Antediluvian is a figure of Canaanite lore which has a lot of stories attached to their inception, many of which contradict and entangle with each other. They go by a plethora of names, but today we will be primarily focusing on the tale of Ravana, or simply Ravnos. Ravana was from the people referred to as Rom, a nomadic peoples which were outcast from the first city. Ravana's particular Rom family were known as the Powara, supposedly descendants of werewolves of the Silent Striders tribe. During their travels, the youngest daughter of the Powara's leader, Lateshi, met a strange figure by nightfall. Compelled by his tale, Lateshi guided the figure back to the nomadic camp, where this person would introduce themselves as Cain. Cain lived amongst their people, after having won their hearts through his tragic tales. He was permitted to travel with the tribe, granted that he did not feed from their people. The various Garu, which travelled with the Powara, were intensely skeptical of this man's presence, yet albeit permitted him to enter their ranks. Over the months of which Cain travelled with the nomadic clan, he soon became a much-loved member of their family. He formed a particularly strong bond with the leader's son, a young boy named Ravana, or Ravnos, a figure of which Cain became enamoured by due to his intense spirit and mind filled with hopes and dreams. The boy's father was slaughtered by wandering kindred who set themselves upon the nomads. Ravana pleaded with Cain to embrace his father to save him from the fate of death. However, Cain could not honour the boy's wishes, yet Ravana pleaded with Cain to embrace him instead. After the Lupines found what had happened to Ravana, they fell into a bloodthirsty rage, vowing to end both Cain and Ravana for their transgressions. This was only stopped by the youngest daughter Lateshi, who calmed the Garu's rage by telling them of her visions. These visions told that one day, Ravana would lead the clan of Ravnos to protect the Rom people from the kindred that wished them harm, and would act as their eternal guardians from the Veil of Darkness. The Lupines, now sufficiently calmed, departed from the family, but always held a great disdain for Ravana's decision to enter unlife. The tale of Ennoia and Ravana is also recalled in a different light by Ravnos scholars. It is said that when Ravana led his people, they set up camp outside the second city. Ennoia, as the myths tell, was banished from the settlement, a sight which brewed pity from the benevolent Ravana. Inviting her to his family, Ravana became intensely close to Ennoia, to the extent that they were deemed as lovers. However, Ennoia had other plans. Lateshi foresaw that Ennoia planned to supplant Ravana as head of the Rom people, and intended to trick Ravana into the hands of the Antediluvians who ruled the second city. Lateshi had a distinct vision of her brother being hung from the high temple, with the harsh rays of the morning sun kissing his skin and violently searing his flesh. Disgusted by this, she summoned the members of her family to capture the treacherous Ennoia. Supposedly, it was Cain himself that passed judgment upon Ennoia, regarding Ravana as his favourite son, and cursed the Gangrel line with the qualities of a beast, which would persist for eternity within her lineage. Now, as you might have guessed, this tale is rather flawed. Such an account would have you believe that Ravana, or Ravnos, was a member of the second generation, not an antediluvian at all, and such scrutiny is placed upon this tale. It is said that the collection of stories surrounding the Ravnos antediluvian are intentionally subversive. As the clan of tricksters, the tales are almost befitting of their nature. What can be said, though, is that the Ravnos antediluvian is perhaps the most prominent threat within the great apocalyptic event known as Gehenna. In the Week of Nightmares, it is said that he arose, but little is known about his status. He may be dead, supposedly obliterated by neutron bombs. He may even have survived, but his presence is still very much felt around the world of darkness, for better or for worse. Saulot is perhaps one of the most benevolent antediluvians within our collection, but he is entangled with another distinct usurper, the former mage Tremere. The defining characteristics of Saulot were that he was a prestigious warrior and a learned healer. He was known throughout his unlife as being a vampire who was opposed to the machinations of the beast, an entity which exists within the blood of all Cainites. Many millennia ago, it was said that he was embraced by the progeny of Cain, the second generation vampire known as Enoch, within the first city, but he soon grew adverse to the kindred society formed within this settlement. It is known that he sired a clan of healers, known as the Salubri, a group of people which would often care for both kindred and kine alike. But Saulot grew tired of the seductions vampirism offered. Casting out the powers of disciplines, Saulot travelled in search for enlightenment, meeting various gurus on his journey. Over various centuries, he developed his signature third eye, of which poignantly resided upon his forehead. It was in this state, completely fatigued and weathered by the world, that he laid claim to the most important path of enlightenment, formerly offered by the angel Gabriel to Cain upon his cursing, known as the Path of Golconda. However, within the age of the Second City, Saulot's progeny grew. Upon his return, the Bali threatened the stability of kindred society, with Saulot's child Samael taking up his sword to defeat the demonic threat. Having finally defeated them within their fortress at Chorazin, Samael rose to prominence as a victorious warrior. Yet, as the Second City fell, Saulot departed and wandered the lands, teaching Golconda to those that wished for enlightenment in those darkened days. However, he soon met his millennia-long sleep, and remained entombed in a state known as torpor. Now, Tremere is not commonly referred to as an ancient. He was not born during the times of the First City and civilizations. In fact, his history is more aligned with the Dark Ages. He was present at the formation of the Order of Hermes as a youth, due to the death of his master Guerna. Whilst he was perhaps the most inexperienced and arguably the weakest of the mages when inducted into the Order of Hermes, he more than made up for this with his militaristic attitude and intensely strict formation of his own house. He had dawned upon the fact that magic could not sustain his form forever, and that a new avenue needed to be sought to ensure that their work would not cease with their present limitations. Utilizing kindred from the clan Gangrel and clan Tzimisce within Eastern Europe, Tremere set to work on his studies, attempting to uncover the power inherent within vampiric blood. It was, however, his assistant Goratrix which brewed the first potion which would reveal the powers of the Curse of Cain. But various sorcerers within Tremere's midst were not keen on the idea of undeath. Alas, they had already angered the clan Tzimisce, having destroyed an elder and child of the present voivode, Vladimir Rustovich. With perseverance and preservation of their unlives ensured, however, this group of mages indulged upon Goratrix's potion, siring themselves into the world of Cainites. However, this effect shattered their avatars, the very source of their arcane abilities, and thus Tremere sought to rekindle some semblance of power of which he had as an awakened mage. The students set to work, parodying the arts of hermetic theory to develop a discipline known as thaumaturgy, on top of constructing horrific nightmares known as gargoyles. Though Tremere was not satisfied with his lot. He had sired himself into the form of a Cainite, yet he had no true legitimacy. Having learned about the Antediluvians, he sought to claim one of their omnipotent souls, to secure his lineage for forevermore. He first sought to diabolarize the Antediluvian known as Set, yet his corsairs swiftly changed to Saulot. After searching for his torporic remains, Tremere soon dawned upon the tomb of the ancient Saulot, and chose to make the ultimate sacrifice. Upon consuming the Ancient One's blood, the man was rendered into a variety of grotesque forms. Immediately sent into torpor, his body morphed and formed into a plethora of nightmarish shapes, growing eyes and appendages which burst out of his corporeal form. It is said that Saulot somehow wished for this diablerie to happen, as many believe that Tremere was manipulated into this horrific act. Saulot's soul was said to have overridden that of Tremere's, but much is subject to speculation. Set was a man who was not born of the First City, with some believing that Set was not even a mortal to begin with, venerating him as a godlike deity within the Egyptian pantheon. If we are to believe the Gnostic mythology surrounding vampires, however, we know that Set was born within Egypt, on the banks of the River Nile some 7 millennia ago. He was an accomplished warrior and an esteemed hunter, whose only rival seemed to be his brother, Osiris. They were both the grandchildren of a figure known as Ra, sometimes known as the sun god, but within vampire mythology, Ra was simply the chieftain of the peoples of the Nile, whom unified the upper and lower regions of Egypt, in part due to Set's incredible skill on the battlefield. Ra, alas, was a jealous ruler. The parents of Set, Geb and Nut, had defied his orders for having additional children, which posed an immediate threat to Ra's royal bloodline. Set, upon being present at the execution of his parents, defied his grandfather's rule, and sought to battle the senile man for the cruelty he showed to his parents, having dismembered his mother and and buried his father alive. But such transgressions led to his brutal exile from Egypt. His brother, Osiris, on the other hand, stayed loyal to his grandfather, and soon became the heir to the throne in spite of his banished brother. In Set's absence, Osiris took to his duties as heir, before being crowned the new chieftain after Ra's eventual death. Osiris made sure that his grandfather was hailed as a god of their people. When Set travelled back to his brother's new kingdom, ready to reconcile, Osiris would have none of it. He upheld his grandfather's rule, which led to Set fully departing Egypt, to travel realms north to Assyria, under the name of Sutekh. Here he supposedly met with the lover of Cain, Zillah, who would eventually become his sire. Set made his way to Enoch, and then to the Second City, and found some form of home within its walls after the Great Deluge. Many tales are told of his time within this place, but some are not so favourable. It is said that Set developed many sibling attachments to the other Antediluvians, but many degenerated into quarrelling. It is said that he was banished from the Second City for devouring the heart of the Toreador Antediluvian, Arikel, a judgment passed by Malkav. According to myth, this led to Set to return to the lands of his brother's kingdom once more, empowered by the curse of Cain. There he battled with Osiris and his son Horus, and took over the kingdom of Egypt as his own. It is said that Set has awoken only a few times, making various prophecies in his brief moments of stirring. It is foretold that he will be present within the end days, known as Gehenna, but such rumours are extremely elusive. Whichever story you wish to believe, Arikel or Ishtar, both are referred to as being the highest degree of beauty which ever graced the world of darkness. In the tale of Arikel, it is said that she was the progeny of Enoch, and is claimed to be one of the eldest antediluvian of them all. She served as Cain's personal sculptor, being known as his blossom. Arikel was well known for not indulging in the wild behaviours of her siblings, and confided in Saulot for an answer to the reckless inhumanity displayed by her kin. Saulot said that the only way to retain one's own ties to the human soul was through empathy, and thus Arikel and the Brujah usurper Troil worked on a piece of art to display to Cain. When it was brought before him, he was so touched apparently that he forgave them for any past stains, and this event led to the forging of the Road of Humanity. Yet despite this tale, Arikel is known for much more than superficial virtues. She was known to be fickle, vain, and compliant with the other Antediluvians' meddlings. This cannot be said for her other mythological counterpart, known as Ishtar. Ishtar is said to have been a woman also chosen for her immense beauty, and was a citizen of Ubar before it became known as Enoch. After the Great Deluge, when the Antediluvians conspired to kill their blood parents, Ishtar is known to have been completely absent from their bloodied deeds. Thus, when Cain entered the Second City to curse the Antediluvians for their crimes, Ishtar was untouched, having been believed to be innocent, though such tales are perhaps wishful thinking on behalf of the Toreador clan. Regardless of what you wish to believe, it is said that the Toreador Antediluvian travelled to Greece, where she is said to have awoken once more, perhaps to aid and advise as she once did in her earlier unlife. However, she has garnered a variety of enemies, especially those of her own siblings. With the stain of being innocent, many believe that she is constantly hunted by the Antediluvians who were cursed severely by Cain, especially the Nosferatu Antediluvian Absimiliard, who is said to constantly bay for her blood. There are a few installments in which we have covered the Eldest, and I would highly recommend viewing those after you have sampled a mere drop of his essence here. In some lofty tales, the Eldest, whilst being an oracle in life, was embraced due to the scheming of either Irad the Strong or Enosh the Lawgiver. Both are said that their experiments were due to them wanting to see if a mortal could harness the cruel aspects of vampirism in a condensed form. Irad supposedly ejected a great mass of protean, formed from all the malignant essences of his body, and coerced this mortal to consume the horrifying matter. Enosh, in perhaps a similar line of thinking, embraced the Eldest by concentrating the full extent of the beast into his vitae, when calling upon the mortal to drink from him. Whichever story you wish to believe, however, the Eldest was forged as an unholy experiment, and a trial which would test the extremities of vampirism. The Eldest, as you may expect, detested the limitations of the human form, siding with the calls of the beast which reverberated around his being. In solitude, he wished to morph out out of the confines of the human corporeal form, and set about changing his shape to befit his destined image. The Eldest is known to have lived in seclusion from all the other Antediluvians, and did not stay in the first city for long. Many believe he departed for the lands known as Transylvania long before the deluge, where he swore to learn more about the path of metamorphosis, and his own twisted sense of enlightenment. Some even believe that he has outgrown his human form, and that he now dwells in the subterranean levels of city sewer systems, as a gargantuan, amorphous mass of flesh and tissue, seeking constant sacrifices to satiate his ever-growing thirst for power. Our final antediluvian is that of Ventrue, the progenitor of the clan of kings. His tale is a simple one, but it is befitting of his clan's constant reminders that they are in fact the chosen few to inherit this earth. Ventrue claims to be the eldest of all the Antediluvians, having been embraced in the first city of Enoch, and being the personal favourite of Cain, who took the boy in during his youth and raised him as one of his own. He subsequently rose to a great office after his embrace at the hands of Enoch, becoming the Hand of Cain. Some speculate that Cain even visited the man personally in the nights before the Great Flood, and entrusted him with becoming the caretaker of all vampire kind, including that of his sire and his superiors. However, despite Ventrue being the last vampire to see Cain before the flood, he was perhaps the most instrumental in the killings of the second generation. Many believe that Ventrue led the uprising himself, out of supposed loyalty to Cain, but still suffered a curse from his master for his ultimate transgression. Ventrue, after this event, sought to bring solid rule to the second city, yet he led a tumultuous reign. As the Hand of Cain over the city, he saw the first great quarrelings of the Antediluvians, which soon grew into what is now known as the Great Eternal Struggle. After witnessing the destruction of Brujah by the hands of Troil, the man swiftly sought out Cain to deliver divine judgment upon the blood usurper. But the ancient myths dictate that as he exited the walls of the city, he was ambushed in horrific fashion by those that defied his law. Many of his own clan even believe that Ventrue met his final death that night, and have, as such, distanced themselves from the stories of the Antediluvians, believing that they are the only free clan. This is perhaps in part why the modern masquerade exists, and that these tales of the third generation are so taboo within present nights. The Ventrue's grasp upon what is fact and what is fiction is paramount, and the tales of their blood parents are easily erased from the fabric of time itself. Thank you for watching. Many apologies for the delay on this video. After a bad spell of ill health, it has taken a while to produce this video. I just want to thank you all again for supporting this channel over the year. It has been a big step for me to produce this content for you all, and your support has been immense. I can't wait for what comes in 2023. Again, a huge thanks to World Anvil for supporting this video. Please do check them out in the links below. Also, feel free to drop a like or even subscribe to the channel to keep supporting this content. It truly does mean a hell of a lot. And so, until next time, stay safe and do not wander naively into the night.